Alright, hello everyone. Today I will be comparing the conceptions of whiteness between Filipinos and African Americans using the literature that we have read this semester, two of which are Matt Johnson's Pimp and Jean Toomer's Cane. My name is Elijah Bautista and I am a Filipino American. So just a little overview of what I'll be presenting today. I'll go a little bit over about who I am. Then I will introduce this model called the Whiteness as Group Identity Model. And then I will introduce the authors, Jean Toomer and Matt Johnson. Then I'll go over how Filipinos view whiteness, the phenomenon of what pigmentocracy is, how African Americans view whiteness compared to other races. Then I'll conclude, and if there's any questions at the end, I'll be happy to answer them. Alright, so let's begin. I was born in New York, in the borough of Bronx, and later spent most of my life in New Jersey, around 10 years. And there I was involved in Boy Scouts. And I didn't stay a member for so long, mostly because I felt that my color was small compared to the rest, that I was the minority, the numerical minority among the majority who were not Filipino or Caucasian. And so I walked into my first meeting as a Boy Scout, and out of 12 kids, there were only 2 Filipino kids other than me. And I was pretty much the unapproachable among the approachable, the numerical minority among the majority who were just not Filipino. The rest of them were Caucasian for the most part. And so with that, I felt powerless. With that, I felt that I wasn't a part of the majority, and that made me feel a little bit inferior. And so in this article published by Psychology Today, titled The Meaning of Whiteness, Mikhail Lyubansky describes the whiteness as group identity model to conceptualize whiteness as one of many different racial identities, the strength of which is determined by 4 factors: size, power, discrimination, and appearance. What this model tells us is that individuals who are a part of a numerical minority group tend to have less power relative to other groups, experience more discrimination, and have a greater sense of racial identity. So right now I want to introduce the authors. Here is a photograph of Jean Toomer, and what's interesting about him is that he is biracial, and as a writer, his whiteness serves as a backdrop that he uses to express his black identity. He openly claims that he identifies himself as Cadmus, who is a character in his novel Cane. Cadmus is a black professor living in the South during the 1920s in the midst of racial violence. His transition from being a privileged black man who was raised in a northern white society to living in an underprivileged environment comprised mostly of lower-class southern blacks had made him feel inferior and below authority. His gaze rests, bewildered-like, on the courthouse tower. It is dull silver in the moonlight. White child that sleeps upon the top of pines. Cadmus' mind clears. He sees himself yanked beneath that tower. So here the courthouse tower symbolizes white dominance, and after gazing at it, Cadmus feels as if he had been pulled down the ladder of social decency. Having been associated with whiteness as a black man, Cadmus struggles with the curse of being identified as a higher class individual living in the South, where the culture of lower class black society is rooted, and where southern blacks are also threatened by violence ensued from the discriminating white society. So just like, we'll just leave it with that. So just like the Cadmus who felt powerless in the midst of uncertainty and discrimination, I feel that in the same way, my experience as the numerical minority in Boy Scouts made me feel just as powerless, but with a better sense of my racial identity, as reflected in the whiteness as group identity model. Now, Matt Johnson is also a biracial novelist who currently works at the University of Houston as a creative writing professor. In his novel Pim, he identifies himself as Chris James, an African-American literature professor who was eventually denied tenure when he refused to serve as the black representative on the college's diversity committee. And here are a couple quotes from the novel. So you want the black guy to just teach black books to the white kids. Please listen to me, I pleaded. My work is about finding the answer to why we have failed to truly become a post-racial society. The work I am doing is just books, sure, but it's important, essential research. You're going to fire me for refusing to sit on the campus diversity committee? So just as Chris James was uncomfortable being the only black professor on the diversity committee, I felt just the same way being one of the 3 non-white boys in our scout pack, among the 9 who were white. This reflects the whiteness as group identity model, and that because I was part of the numerical minority, I felt that I had less power, felt more discrimination, and had a sense of my racial identity among those who weren't Filipino. Okay, so now I'll be going over how Filipinos view whiteness. For the most part, Filipinos see whiteness as beauty. It's no surprise seeing light-skinned Filipinos dominate the big screen. Lower working-class Filipinos are mostly comprised of those who have a dark-skinned complexion. Having been working under the sun so much by street vending, as you can see in these photographs, public transportation, and by simply scavenging for food, the majority of the people on the streets have a much darker complexion. And so you can see in these photographs that these people are street vending, and having so much exposure to the sun, they can get tan, and yeah. Skin lightening products are also a booming industry in the Philippines, and they're making a lot of money currently. The most notable company who develops these products is Bello Cosmetics, who are hosted in the Philippines. And those who can afford these products are usually the privileged, higher-class Filipino actors and actresses who want to maintain their light complexion on the big screen. And if you're wondering what social means, that is a Filipino colloquial term meaning social or classy. So if you're 10% lighter, you're considered 100% more classy.
I know.
Also, Filipino women aspire to marry white men, particularly from America, for 2 reasons: to acquire the opportunities that one could only receive when living in America, and also they want to open the gate of opportunity for their family back home in the Philippines. And these couples here in the photographs met through an online dating service catered to Filipinos looking for a foreign partner. So the phenomenon of pigmentocracy is described in an article called "Slavery is Over, but Colorism Persists" by Fatura Burrows. And in that article, she describes pigmentocracy as a phenomenon which refers to a hierarchy based on skin hue and extensive features such as hair texture and the size and shape of the nose and lips. In Pym, the narrator Chris James describes how simply the color of one's skin determines their placement in the hierarchy of social decency. I find myself thinking about Carvel's pigeons, or rather, why is the white dove so highly regarded because of its lack of pigmentation? How is it that something so minor as the color of a bird's feathers can make the difference between being regarded as an international symbol of peace and being the urban symbol of filth and nuisance? From what the narrator observes in this account, it is as though the wealth found in whiteness is an attribute that is purely natural and deserving of the highest standard, and anything other than white is considered secondary and unattractive. This hierarchy of value in regard to skin color may sound absurd, but in actuality it seems that the very nature of human beings deems whiteness as beauty that is without blemish. So, whiteness compared to other races. This is Carl Linnaeus, and he is known as the father of taxonomy. He is a Swedish zoologist and biologist who, in his research, proposed 4 categories of race: Americanus, Asiaticus, Africanus, and Europeanus. And with each race, he gave them particular traits. Europeanus people being considered white, gentle, and inventive; Asiatic, yellowish, greedy, and easily distracted; Americanus, reddish, stubborn, and easily angered; and Africanus, black, relaxed, and negligent. All Alright, so here is a picture of laundry. Now I chose this picture because I felt that the symbolism behind the separation of white clothes and colored clothes sums up how whiteness is compared to other races, because as a general rule, people separate their clothes for washing because of the fear of introducing hints of unwanted color on their white clothes. And in Pym, Chris James put it best when he says that it is how they stay so white. By refusing to accept blemish or history, whiteness isn't about being something, it is about being nothing, an erasure. Covering over the truth with layers of blank reality, just as the snowstorm was now covering our tent, whipping away all traces of our existence from this pristine landscape. Now here we have a set of photographs taken by Martin Schuler, published by National Geographic, of what the average American will look like in the year 2050. You can take a look at that. I believe that in the future of our society, the meaning of color will take on a more unified form, and as race and color continue to assimilate into each other, the more colorful the human race will become. In conclusion, there is a recurring theme that is prevalent across societies all over the world. About whiteness is a standard from which a race, culture, or social class is to be compared, measured, and identified with. Both Kane and Pym offer a glimpse of what whiteness is from the perspective of authors who are both of mixed black and white ancestry. Through the whiteness as group identity model, I was able to empathize with the authors and with the characters they identified themselves with, as being the minority among a more powerful majority. But despite this, their whiteness served as a backdrop from which to identify their blackness through the characters they created. And I'm sure Toomer and Johnson would agree with James Weldon Johnson when he says, "The colored people of this country know and understand the white people better than the white people will ever know and understand themselves." All right, we have reached the end of my presentation. Any questions, comments, or concerns?
The slides you had of Linnaeus, can you go back to that?
Okay.
Just arrow back,
Okay.
arrow on the keyboard. Pull out the keyboard, okay, or do that. Right there. Okay, do you think that these stereotypes still persist?
Well, I'm pretty sure during his time period that was what he conceived these races as. But now in our society, I'm very sure that that idea has changed. Because considering how Europeanist people he considered were gentle, that can vary between people's perspectives.
But do you think stereotypes of Asians and Native Americans and Africans, do you think that those stereotypes persist today?
To this day?
Yeah.
Again, it all depends on certain people. This is actually an example of scientific racism in which, by his perspective, he chose these traits for these races. And I'm very sure that between each individual, we all have our different perspectives of who we are. So I'm not very sure. Yeah, to some people it does persist today. To some people it has changed, the definition of each race.
I don't have a question, I have a comment so much, and I realize we're focusing here on Filipinos, but when I remember maybe 15 years ago there was a study looking at African American models, and they look more white, or predominantly the supermodels look more white than they did black. And soon after that study, like Revlon or Maybelline, one of those big makeup companies, had chosen as their spokesperson this woman who looked more black than white. It was very revolutionary. It was you know, shocking, and it was applauded, and a good thing. So I guess that's just my comment. That's it.
Well, the woman from 12 Years a Slave is on the People magazine cover as one of the most beautiful people, you know, their annual beautiful people. So I'm waiting to see.
Is that a peer review journal?
That is not a peer-reviewed journal, no. But I'm waiting to see what's going to happen. You know, just what people are going to say.
Why? What do you mean? I don't know what she looks like.
Oh, she's beautiful and dark.
Okay.
And she's just this beautiful She looks African, actually. You not African American, she looks African, but she's gorgeous. And so I'm just curious as to what the news channels are gonna be saying about
10 years
it.
ago or 15 years
Right.
ago when Revlon
Yeah.
hired this
Yeah,
spokesperson.
is the
who
conversation gonna, is the
obviously-
discourse going to be the same?
Yeah,
You know, that's, I'm not making a statement,
Yeah, yeah, no, I
I'm
just-
curious about it. Well, I guess my statement is that,
I think
I'm
people
cynical
have become
about
more
what people say.
accepting of, what color it is nowadays.
well, we think that, and then Gabby Douglas, the Olympic gold medalist in gymnastics, there were really nasty comments about her something not looking black enough or looking too black or something, I don't know, but I mean, you can't take internet trolls too seriously. What the problem is that the media then takes internet trolls seriously and reruns their comments. No, you can't.
Your question?
Do you think that the terms of African American or Asian American or Filipino American like separates you or the people from society even more than the actual race itself does?
I think it's just a label that we put for ourselves. It really all depends on how you use who you are, what your race is, and how you identify yourself in society. I know some people who are half black, half white, and they use their race, their biracialness to be a force of political justice,
Right.
and that's how they identify themselves. There's several ways. It all depends on who you are. That's it.
I love your laundry slide. I love that
good
slide.
example.
Yeah.